Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Black Logic. So this morning, Governor Abbott vows to oust Democratic lawmakers who fled state to block GOP-led redistricting push. And President axes BLS head, defends policies while attacking Schumer over slumping economic reports. And critics warn Trump's firing of labor stats chief politicizing data and undermines market trust. Plans for a massive London embassy draw hacking allegations and security warning from MI5 and allies. New cyber attacks linked to China's UK embassy project raise fears of espionage and data infiltration. And explosive claims surfacing alleging that Epstein ties to Israeli intelligence, also known as the Mossad, sparking renowned calls for unredacted intel files. Oh, we're going to get into it this morning, and believe me, this is very interesting. So Texas House Democrats fled the Lone Star State, traveling to Illinois, New York, Boston, and more, denying quorum to block a Trump-backed redistricting plan designed to add 5 GOP-leaning congressional seats ahead of the 2026 midterms. And Governor Abbott responded by threatening removal from office and 500 daily fines if they do not return by the House reconvening. An escalation reminiscent of the 2003 Killer D's walked out. So this is a ploy to have Democrats in place to basically to be unseated. So GOP will have a stronger force within Texas. But again, this is a strategy that, different political parties, even the Democrats, have used in the past 200 years of always trying to redistrict a certain area that the demographics in some regards have changed. Either people are leaning more left or people leaning more right. So again, this is about power. This is about keeping a certain political party in power, whether the GOP or the Democrats. So again, this is political theater at its best, but it can result in Democrats losing roughly 5 seats, and then that area would be GOP led. So again, this is just another way to redistribute power and authority when it comes to the redistricting of these certain areas. And now Governor Abbott is stating, if you don't come back to Texas, because again, they left to Illinois, New York, and Boston, so they cannot vote on this, because if they don't have the enough votes, then this won't be able to execute, so to speak. But I'll give you guys more information as that as well. But this is, again, typical of each political party, not just the GOP. So I don't think is one-sided when it comes to that. Now, Trump news at a glance. So it states here that President lashes out at Schumer as officials defend his economic policies. And what has come out from this, President Trump has fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics chief following poor economic reports. He's also taken direct aim at Senate Majority Leader Schumer on X, calling him out in a dramatic meltdown. Officials are scrambling to defend economic policy amid criticism of politicizing data. It also goes on to state here, as you see on you guys' screen, that Trump angry over confirmations delay. Administration suffers bruising week of poor economic trade and employment numbers. Key U.S. politics stories from Sunday, August at a glance. Now, the president received some news about the economy that he expected to be more favorable to a lot of the actions he's been doing, but it has not been favorable. So he's fired the labor chief, basically stating that these are false reports. So let me go just to read a little bit here to give you context. It has not been a brilliant weekend for President Trump on Sunday. Administration officials fanned out on U.S. political shows to defend the president's policy after a bruising week of poor economic, trade, and employment numbers that culminated with the firing of Labor Statistics Chief Erica McToffer. The U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said Trump has real concerns about the job numbers that extend beyond Friday's report that showed the national economy added only 73,000 jobs in July, far below expectations. Job growth numbers were revised down by 285,000 for the 2 previous months as well. And on CBS News Face the Nation, Greer defended Trump's decision to fire McIntyre, a respected statistician, saying you want to be able to have somewhat reliable numbers. There are always revisions, but sometimes you see the revisions go in really extreme ways. It comes as the president himself lashed out at Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer on social media, telling him, go to hell, after a Senate standoff over confirmation. So again, this is one of those political battles of the president, of all the actions he made inside the economy. And now he's getting less favorable reports of the economics, the business dealings, the negotiations, as well as the trade, as well as the tariffs, not panning out and showing a positive representation of increased job growth. Now, the revision of those numbers, or the expectation of those numbers, were to add 285,000 jobs to our economy. But those reports state is only 73,000 jobs. So again, this is not the sort of news that President Trump really wanted to hear. Let me also provide a little more context when it comes to these numbers. President Donald Trump turned years of skepticism about government economic data into action Friday, firing Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner, as we stated before. It also goes on that Trump accused McIntyre without evidence of producing phony and rigged figures. We fired her because we didn't believe the numbers today, Trump said in an interview with Newsmax. The firing quickly raised alarm across the political and economic spectrum. A Biden, and now the person that was in place, McIntyre, was a Biden appointee and was confirmed in January of 2024 on an 86-6 bipartisan Senate vote, meaning that majority of people voted for this person, stating that she is well qualified and that she should be in place. So essentially, Trump just kept her in place, okay? Her ousting was condemned by economists and lawmakers who said it jeopardized the independence of key federal data that underpins decisions across government and markets. And again, this is a way, in my opinion, this is my conjecture and rhetoric, that Trump, a lot of the action she's made political has not panned out the way that he thought it would in the economy, which in some regards has been opposing to economists, stating that the things that he's doing. Now, again, you have economists on both sides, for and against, nay and yay of some of the actions, some of the tariffs, a lot of the political legislation dealing with the economy. Again, you have economists all across the board in America stating they are for or against some of the actions that President Trump is making. Now, when it comes to this, now he's not in favor of the numbers that the labor chief here has, produced to President Trump. But again, the way I look at this, it kind of just makes me think that when you're in positions of power and authority, especially, the largest GDP in the world like America, and you're the president, and you receive less favorable numbers to the actions, legislations that you put forth. So you fire the person who produced the numbers. Now, granted, you're saying that, again, let me blow this up for you guys and highlight it. You're saying that the numbers are phony and rigged. Really? Really? All of a sudden, we're now producing funny and rigged numbers. And she got fired very quickly. In my opinion, before you fire someone on this level, because again, this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner, okay, a very high position of authority when producing numbers that is, statistics that give us insight of how our company is operating economically, especially when it comes to the job market, no less. And you're stating that it's phony and rigged, that she just sort of made up these phony numbers and rigged these figures. And you state that we fired her. Let me show you. We fired her because we didn't believe the numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, This is not about feelings. This is statistics. This is accounting. This is numbers. We don't believe the numbers. Then get third-party neutralists who are accountants, people who deal in statistics, to come in and fact check and verify her numbers. Why just fire her? Well, she was a Biden appointee. Who cares who appointed her? If she's doing her job honorably, if she's doing her job legitimately, then keep her in place, because evidently she's been doing a good job. She's been doing a decent job. And to fire her because you do not believe the numbers is just, I mean, it's insane. Now, granted, I've been very, very unapologetically neutral when it comes to government officials, even the president. With some of the actions and legislations that I believe that was great for the countries, I'm all on board with those legislations. When I believe legislations and acts, accusations, alleges, all of those things, I've been totally against, because again, I don't take no side, whether it be GOP, Republicans, or liberal Democrats. I don't take anyone's side. I just want the side of the truth. But when I hear that the president made these statements, okay, I want you guys to see this. When he made these statements, let me see. We fired her, and this is from the president. We fired her because we didn't believe the numbers today. Because you didn't believe them, not because we fact check it. Not because we had an independent auditor. We had an independent auditor to look into these numbers and found that a lot of these numbers are phony. A lot of these numbers are rigged. But we just didn't, you know what? I got on a scale, ladies and gentlemen, and the scale said 265, 270. That scale is broken. Let's get another scale in. Well, did you calibrate it? Oh, you have to calibrate it. What does calibrating do? It makes sure that you guys get where I'm getting at. You don't make any decision on this level based upon the way you feel. We fired her because we didn't believe the numbers were today. It's kind of, it's like if you're at work, right, and you have a mundane job, it's systematic, you do the same thing over and over again, you respond to emails, you make emails, you type in report data, whatever your job may do, but it's constantly the same thing over and over again. And then your boss come in and say, we're going to have to let you go. Why are you letting me go? Because we just feel that the actions and the input of data that you put into the system, we don't believe that is what you did. What? You see the actual work inside the system, do you not? Yeah, but we don't believe that the work that you did was the job you should do. Like, you just have to make up cocky-mamie, things. Do something else with this. Because just firing people because you don't believe the numbers without doing an audit, without having independent contractors to come in and actually fact check the numbers, is this totally authoritarianism at its best. That's what this is about. I don't like it, you're fired, until I do like it. It's, you know what? We're getting real close to North Korea. President Trump is getting real close to Kim Jong-il and and all of them in these actions right here. And again, and granted, people have been saying this from the very beginning, but me personally, when I look in the system of white supremacy, you know what? When you know what you're dealing with, you just got to keep going forward. You just have to keep going forward, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm just going to read this a little bit more for context. The firing quickly raised alarms across the political and economic spectrum. And again, she was confirmed in January 2024 in the 86 bipartisan Senate vote. If the president is firing, let me highlight this for you. If the president is firing the statistician because he doesn't like the numbers, but they are accurate, that's a problem. Senator Cynthia Lummis, Republican, Wyoming, told reporters, according to NBC News, it's not the statistician's fault if the numbers are accurate and that they're not what the president had hoped for. My point exactly, ladies and gentlemen. Even another Republican is stating out, just because you don't like the numbers don't mean that they're wrong, and don't mean that is just cause for someone to get fired. That's just, wow. Anyway, Plans for China's massive new embassy at the Royal Mint Court in London have triggered fierce backlash. UK security agencies, including MI5 and GCHQ, feared the site could be used for cyber espionage, tapping into cables and networks near data hubs. Hackers' secret diplomatic cables and local protests are clashing with diplomatic symbolism. Legal decisions expected by early September. Now, we have actual accounts of China doing very low-level espionage of collecting data and information. We also have information and evidence here that China actually had a security force, a police force, police officers right here in America. You mean to tell me you guys are going to open up a Chinese embassy in the heart of your data and network capabilities, and you don't think that they're going to try to hack some of the signaling? Because again, a lot of governments work on intranets, not internets, but intranets, right? Everything is somewhat internal, but they do have ports and protocols that allow them to go on, again, kind of using American terms here, in the military, depending on your security clearance, depending on the way your office operate, a lot of offices have what they call SCIFs, and these are just security offices where you can't bring in your cell phone. Everything is done what they call on the SIPRnet, right? A security, I forgot what the actual abbreviation, but I believe it's SIPR, and it's just a security protocol where the computers that you're using, the data systems that you're using are closed off to the outside world. And then you have what they call the nipper. The nipper is where you can kind of go on the World Wide Web, but there's really no sensitive or secret information that you can access from the nipper. You have to go into a SCIF inside of the SIPR, okay? The SIPRnet or the SCIF, so to speak. Nonetheless, I'm kind of giving you guys more than what this story is called for, but I'm just making that it's very possible, if they are in close proximity, and if the UK does anything over the internet, if they do anything over Wi-Fi, if they do anything where there's an outside signal, it's possible that Chinese hackers could tap into it. Now, to this story point, they were talking about how they are close to cables and networks. Now, they could do a physical tap in of cables. Let me just read a little bit of this to provide context. It states that at the bottom in red are the words, a reward of 1 million Hong Kong dollars together with a UK phone number to earn the money, about 95,000 euros. This is a simple instructions. Provide information on this wanted person and the related crime, or take her to Chinese embassy. The woman from the photo is standing in front of me. She shudders when she looks at the building. We are outside an imposing structure that was once home to the Royal Mint, in which China hopes it can develop into a new mega embassy in London, replacing far smaller premises it has occupied since 1877. And basically, they're just making her a fall person. It goes on to state that the new premise opposite the Tower of London is already being patrolled by Chinese security guards. The building is rigged with CCTV cameras as well. And why is this important to America? Because the UK and United States of America, we are allies, and believe it or not, we do share intelligence. And if they can tap into the UK, they are privy and will have access and could garner and obtain information on America and all our international dealings that the UK are partnered with or have access to or have information on. That's why this is important. So again, China is hell-bent on their world domination economically through data and information. Now, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Mossad and how it pertains to the connection of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I'm just going to read a little bit of this because I believe a lot of you guys are familiar with the Mossad, the Israeli Secret Intelligence Services. It states that the Mossad was established immediately after the establishment of the State of Israel, when Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion recognized that the national frameworks must be set up for the intelligent bodies that already operated prior to the establishment of the state. As it customary worldwide, the decision was to set up three separate frameworks: a military intelligence service, later the IDI, an internal security service, later the ISA, and an intelligence service operating abroad called the Mossad. Goes on to say that Mossad is Israel's national intelligence agency responsible for foreign intelligence gathering, covert operations, and counter operations and counterterrorism. It is one of the three major Israeli intelligence agencies alongside Amman, military intelligence, and Shin internal security. Mossad's main functions include gathering intelligence, analyzing information, and conducting secret operations abroad. That includes assassinations. I'm just going to throw that in there. They don't have to put that in there for me to throw it in there because we just know these things to be true. How does this pertain to Jeffrey Epstein? What are the connection that people are making, or the connections that Jeffrey Epstein has with the Mossad? Because I'm coming at you with a truth bomb, and in my opinion, that rattles the corridors of power, because Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a financier with elite friends, according to investigative accounts. He may have been an intelligence asset for Mossad. So let's unpack that a little further. Now, first, Epstein untraceable wealth and access. He held Austrian passports under false identities and claimed to have worked for governments retrieving stolen capital. Even he told some that he belonged to intelligence and that his prosecutorial fate was above pay grade. Then there's the Mossad connection via Ari Ben Mazazi, a former Israeli intel officer. He publicly testified that Epstein served to compel on powerful elites, essentially blackmail fodder for foreign intelligence. This theory gains real heft when you consider Epstein's social ties. Now, Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Ehud Barak, with whom Epstein invested and met dozens of times, and no other the infamous, now transferred to Club Fed in Texas, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, long suspected of Mossad involvement. Now, additionally, a recent book by Andrew Lawney claims that Epstein sold compromising intel on Prince Andrew to not only the Mossad, but also Libyan and Saudi agencies. Now, Stefan Hausenberg, Epstein's early associate, described Prince Andrew as his Super Bowl trophy, saying Epstein planned on selling intel to Israel. So here's the question. Why has the so-called Epstein list never surfaced? This is when I kind of get into conspiracy theories on a very high level. And when we start to talk about conspiracy theory, people, that doesn't mean that they're false. As I dive deeper into the Epstein list, aka the Epstein files, the more I think that, was this about sex trafficking children? Or is it something in these Epstein files that has something to do with foreign intelligence by the way of the Mossad? Was Epstein some sort of Mossad informant? Was Epstein some form of special Mossad agent? These are the questions, because as we look at Jeffrey Epstein ties, and we also look at the people he was connected to, as well as Ghislaine Maxwell, who now has been transferred to, as they are stating, Club Fed, but a very low minimum security prison in Texas from the maximum security. And these prisons that they call Club Fed are for white collar criminals, nonviolent criminals. And a lot of people are speaking out that they're now fear for her life, that she may be under threat because other criminals in the jail, white collar, stating that they don't like her being there because she's a violent criminal because it had to do with sex trafficking. I get it. Ghislaine Maxwell, by the way of her father, Robert Maxwell. So as I'm looking at all these ties that Epstein have, and we're so focused on the sex trafficking of children, what if that just a made up story for us, the people, to focus mainly on, and not his ties to the Mossad, not his tie to Libya, not his tie to foreign agencies and providing intelligence to these foreign powers? Because I want you guys to think about this. Jeffrey Epstein were in dealings, were in special gatherings, and in cahoots with U.S. politicians, U.S. businessmen who are worth millions and billions of dollars, which gives him instant access to high-level information. When it comes to Fortune 500 businesses, to our political legislation, the way that we govern our country, he had access to all this information. Is it possible that his ties to the Mossad is the reason why these Epstein files, the Epstein list, has not been released? Is the Epstein list even real? That's the question I'm holding here. Are the Epstein files, aka the Epstein list, even real? Pam Bondi stated, okay, he was the United States AG, that there's hundreds of hours of videos of Jeffrey Epstein dealing with child pornography, Jeffrey Epstein dealing with child exploration. And again, Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan and stating that there's nothing in the files that you want. So I really been harping on that term from Kash Patel. He stated to Joe Rogan that there's nothing in the files that you will want. So is there anything in the files of child pornography or child sex trafficking with these young girls that are under the age of 18? Is this even real? Because again, where are the victims? Remember, I asked that. I've been asking this for weeks. Where are the victims? Where are the victims' mothers? Did they pay off anybody? Where's the money trail? There's money somewhere. He was a billionaire. And everybody's asking, how did Jeffrey Epstein become a billionaire so quickly? They said that he actually was an account advisor for one of his friends who were very, very wealthy. And that's how, and he also gathered in other billion-dollar accounts. And that's how he kind of gained his riches. Like, the more you dig into this, the more confusing, but the more it becomes clear. Is there an Epstein list? Or is this a charade of a cover-up of his Mossad ties and the intelligence that he gathered from U.S. and other foreign officials? That's the question I have. The way that we dig about this becomes more and more interesting. Because the question is, so why has the so-called Epstein list never surfaced? Because officially the DOJ and the FBI released over 300 gigabytes of data, but concluded there was no client list. There is no evidence of intelligent case protocols like CIPA review, meaning of intelligence was involved. They found no trace of his investigations. And a lot of people are arguing that this omission itself is suspicious. Was data withheld to protect foreign and domestic power players, other espionage, other spies? Now, of course, Israel's former prime minister, Naftali Bennett, who directly oversaw Mossad, has strongly denied all ties, calling the claims vicious slander and lies. Meanwhile, political figures like Tucker Carlson have reignited these theories, claiming many in Washington privately believe Epstein worked for foreign intelligence, preferring silence in public forums. So, as I'm kind of just making the connections myself, using all the power of the internet, When I think about the intelligence claims and some of the key connections that we have here, that Epstein claimed intelligent ties, Ben Manassi says Mossad under Epstein for blackmail material. And then we look at the network access, high-level names like Urud Barak, Robert Maxwell, acquaintances list in his black book. Now, these are all people that are in the so-called black book of his associates. And we also have the thought of why this matters, because we have elite access consistent with intelligent asset roles. And then we get into the Epstein file suppression. The DOJ confirms no client lists, no intelligent protocols triggered. That really raises questions that the DOJ confirms that there's no client list. Then you also have the counterpoints. Burnett denies that Mossad involvement, and then the internal FBI review found no evidence of espionage. When I really dive into this, this reads like a conspiracy. And that's because the official disclosures leave massive gaps in all of these stories. The Epstein's network, unusual wealth, intelligence link insiders, and the persistent absence of a client list have this spawned sustained debate, while concrete proof remains limited. The circumstantial web raises unavoidable questions that leaked into politics, national security, and the possibility of systematic cover-ups. This is the reason why a lot of people believe that Jeffrey Epstein was assassinated inside of his jail cell. Where's the body of Jeffrey Epstein? Some people believe that Jeffrey Epstein is still alive. He's on one of his islands somewhere and told not to leave, or they will execute him. There's really a lot to unpack as I dive deeper into this. And just as a disclaimer, I want to let all my subscriber and future subscribers know, I understand this is not Black empowerment. This is definitely some WPS. But I'm just calling this out because not only is it interesting, but also it's, again, one of the pillars that President Trump has ran on, that he will release information, the Epstein list, the Epstein files. But I think because as a commoner, as they call us, commoner, meaning that we don't have access to sensitive and high security level information, the commoners, we don't have information to that. So we're always dealing in conjecture. We're always dealing in rhetoric. We're always dealing in conspiracy theories because we do not have the actual truth. But the more that the commoners dig into this, and the multitude of commoners that dig into this, the truth would eventually come to light. But I believe that will come at a cost. I think we're going to find out more than what we should. And I think, if anything, that's the scary part. But again, by applying pressure to the system to reveal the truth, and again, a lot of people are asking, what is this going to solve? What is this going to accomplish? Because again, this started off with young girls being sex trafficking to Jeffrey Epstein and a lot of his elitist buddies. Could that whole story be, fictitious, and that this is a cover up of foreign intelligence that Jeffrey Epstein was collecting by the way of the Mossad? Could he have been reporting on the United States of America to the Mossad of garnering and gaining insightful information so they can help in negotiating certain support and resources from America? Or did he find out some dirty secrets of America, which is the reason why we consistently support Israel no matter what they do? I just don't know.